First You Think is a not-for-profit ministry of the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. Support us at ucdsm.org today.
My name is Warren Stein, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. And I am president of the Humanist Society of Iowa. And for better or worse this morning, I am a historian by training. So this morning we've got some humanism and also quite a bit of history. Now, the humanist tradition has survived and thrived in this church, and we continue it today. Current and former stalwarts of the humanist philosophy include Dave Whitkey, Bob and Carol Henderson, Terry and Jane Swanson, Bob and Barb Glass, and Ned Miller. We appreciate their caring and dedicated service to our community. The Humanist Society of Iowa provides programming and community for everyone in the area that wants to explore the meaning and practice of humanism. We invite all of you who would like to learn more about humanism and to participate in its activities of special interest to humanists to join us. You can obtain more information from any of our officers, including Brenda Trickler, Al Powers, and myself. One more little aside here before I get going. There's 4 people down here in the corner that the ushers didn't set them there because they were bad. But this is my family. This is Adeline Stein, Janelle Stein, her mother, Myron Stein, my brother, and Michelle Stein, my wife. Mary Hayes, who's sitting about halfway up, she probably did that very wisely because she knew how much trouble some of these people were. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, my brother and I came here, and Mary Hayes was our instructor. So I just had to share that little bit of trivia with you this morning. So going back to our sermon here, as a humanist and a historian, when I came to putting together this morning's sermon, my first thought was to talk about several of the significant historical humanists who have been part of the congregation of First Unitarian. But I decided you really can't do that in 10 minutes. Then I thought, well, I could just talk about humanism. But then I thought, well, that's too much like a lecture. So how can I put all of these things together, though, kind of mix it up and have my cake and eat it, so to speak? So this is what I came up with. You may have noticed that we have many plaques on the walls here in the church. There's several over there. There's one over there. There's some at the entrance. I don't know if you've looked at any of them. If you've ever come into the church through the west entrance, to your right, you may have noticed one specific plaque that says, "In grateful memory of the pioneer religious liberals of Iowa, they dared to follow where the truth led the way." I think this is a rather thought-provoking statement, that last half, and it's worthy of some consideration. First of all, broadly taken, the statement connects us to the 4th Unitarian Universalist principle about a responsible and free search for truth and meaning. But secondly, it recognizes that the following of truth can indeed be daring. And this is true for all followers of truth, regardless of whether or not you're from Iowa or somewhere else. But if you ask yourself why following the truth is daring, the answer must be that it is because following the truth always has consequences, and consequences of all kinds and sorts. So let's survey some individuals who had some consequences. The Greek philosopher Socrates once made the statement that the unexamined life is not worth living. He said this in 399 BCE while presenting his defense in a trial. Socrates, who was 70 years old at the time, had been charged with 3 different offenses, the most severe of which was what the ancient Greeks called asebeia, This is a term which in English might be translated as impiety, but in this context specifically, it meant atheism. Now, the extent of Socrates' atheism at this point was that he believed the sun and the moon were not gods, but the sun was made of stone and that the moon was made of earth. Now, we today would say that Socrates' opinion was not unreasonable based on the information he had, but this was not a popular concept at the time he lived. The jury, consisting of 501 Athenians, found him guilty by a margin of 30 votes and sentenced him to death. Now, the trial of Socrates is not unlike the trial and death of Michael Servetus some 900 years later. Servetus, who is often considered by Unitarians to be the first modern martyr to Unitarianism, was a genius with an exceptional gift for translating languages. Now, he looked closely at the New Testament text in the ancient Koine Greek, in which they were actually written, and he concluded that the concept of the Trinity as held by the Catholic Church was wrong. So Servetus published 3 books on this subject, On the Errors of the Trinity in 1531, Dialogues on the Trinity in 1532, and On the Restoration of Christianity in 1553. Now, because of his beliefs and the fact that he published these books, he was condemned for heresy by both the Roman Catholic Church and the Calvinist Church, and he was eventually arrested, tried, and convicted. As a penalty for his crime, Servetus was burned to death on October 27, 1553, on top of a pyre made mostly of his own books. He actually had a copy of On the Restoration of Christianity chained to his leg. Now, both of these individuals, Socrates and Servetus, died as the result of being independent thinkers who dared look for and follow the truth. Both of them questioned ideas and concepts held by the dominant cultures in their communities and they lived in, and they both suffered the consequences of doing so. Now, a more recent searcher for truth was Joseph Priestley. Born in England on March 24th, 1733, Priestley was another exceptionally gifted individual who searched for truth everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I really mean everywhere. He studied history, politics, grammar, religion, electricity, astronomy, and chemistry. And on the side, he was a Unitarian minister. He's credited with discovering 9 different gases, including oxygen, and he published over 150 books, papers, and pamphlets. Well, so he was something of a science geek, and I don't think the local community liked that. But the local community was also not happy with him because he was a Unitarian. Now, in Britain at this time, if you were not a member of what was the Church of England, or still is the Church of England, you were called a dissenter. And as a dissenter, you had your political and civil liberties restricted, and you couldn't hold many political positions or have certain jobs. So additionally, on top of this, Priestley also publicly supported the French Revolution. He was a firm believer in freedom and free speech. And that makes sense, especially when it comes to things like science and practicing your faith. But supporting the French Revolution was considered sedition by many in Britain at this time. All of these things came to a head on July 14th, 1791. That's about 231 years ago, when the local people decided that these 3 different factors, it was too much. And things literally exploded. Priestley and his family were chased out of their home by a mob. His house and his church were both burned down. Over the next couple days, the homes of 26 other local dissenters, some of which were Quakers, I believe, and 5 dissenter churches were also burned down. And this has been called since then the Priestley riots. So the Priestley family, they fled to another town. They attempted to stay in England for a few more years, but Priestley was continually threatened. He received a lot of hate mail and was actually burned in effigy. So finally, in 1794, he decided to move to the United States, where his family flourished until his death in 1804. So much like Socrates and Servetus, Priestley was engaged in a form of following the truth. He questioned and challenged the values of his community. But unlike Socrates and Servetus, he only lost his home and some material possessions. He managed to escape with his life, but just barely. Now, much more recently, another seeker of the truth was Curtis W. Reese, who some of you may have heard that name before. Reese was born on September 3rd, 1887 in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina into a family of very devout Southern Baptists. It's no great surprise that Reese, early in his life, decided to become a Baptist minister. Towards that end, he attended the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, where in 1908, interestingly enough, Reese would have a class that critiqued the Bible in a very unusual way for the time, and this challenged his beliefs. So as a result, Reese became spiritually conflicted, intellectually conflicted too. In 1911, after completing his degree, Reese became minister at First Baptist Church in Tiffin, Ohio. He wrote about his time in Tiffin saying, "I preached twice each Sunday, but following the evening service, my conscience bothered me. I could and did say what I believed, but I did not feel free to reveal what I did not believe." Now, what Curtis did not believe was pretty significant for a Southern Baptist. He no longer believed in the infallibility of the Bible. He no longer believed in the virgin birth. He no longer believed in redemption through Christ. And he no longer believed in eternal damnation. This meant for Curtis that being a Southern Baptist preacher was no longer an option. So he had several conversations with ministers from different churches. And finally, in 1913, he decided to convert to Unitarianism. This did not go over well with his Southern Baptist family. Now, his father wrote a letter dated May 1st, 1913. "For as dear as I love you, I would almost rather hear of your death than to hear that you left the Baptist and gone to a church that don't believe in Jesus Christ." His mother felt much the same way, according to Reese. Reese later wrote, "My mother wrote very sincerely that she would rather have seen me dead. This is understandable, for had she heard of my death, she would have had the satisfaction of knowing that I was flying around with angels in heaven. But now she was sure that if and when I died, I would burn in hellfire and brimstone forever and ever." One of Reese's sisters felt much the same way. Sometime before his conversion to Unitarianism, she'd named her son after him. But upon hearing of Reese's conversion, she renamed her son to Brunner Truett. This is quite trivial, but Brunner for Western Brunner, who was a well-known Southern Baptist preacher from Kentucky, and Truett for George Washington Truett, who was a well-known Southern Baptist preacher from North Carolina, who later went on to lead the Baptist church in Dallas, Texas, which by the time he left that church, they had over 7,000 members. Truett also is noted for giving a speech on the Capitol steps in Washington, D.C. in 1920 that explicitly stated that the United States is founded on a separation of church and state. And I have to wonder how that would be received today by that same crowd. So if Reese's family was disappointed with his conversion to Unitarianism, one has to ask how they felt about his choices just a couple of years later. So in 1915, Reese became a minister to the congregation of First Unitarian Church of Des Moines, Iowa. It was to this congregation in 1916 that Reese would give what is considered the first explicitly humanist sermon to be given in North America. Reese, along with another Unitarian minister, a fellow named John Dietrich from Minnesota, in 1917, at a meeting of the Western Unitarian Conference, which was held that year in Des Moines, they discovered that they'd both been using the term humanist to describe a new shared philosophical outlook. So Rees and Dietrich and a number of others would continue to discuss, analyze, and develop this new philosophy of humanism over the next several years. And in 1933, Rees would be one of the primary editors of a document called the Humanist Manifesto. Now, I would like to point out that there have been several newer manifestos been produced since 1933. Basically, if you're a humanist, as the world changes, humanism sort of updates and adapts to that. The most recent Humanist Manifesto dates to 2003. So this 1933 Humanist Manifesto contains 15 statements which would come to define the core of this growing humanist movement for quite a while to come. Now, let me read 5 of these statements from this manifesto to give you a feel for just how far Rees had moved from his Southern Baptist roots. Please note I've sort of modernized some of the wording for a couple of these statements. So number 1, humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created. Number 2, humanism believes that humans are part of nature and that they have emerged as a result of a continual process. Number 3, holding an organic view of life, humanists find that the traditional dualism of mind and body must be rejected. Number 4, humanism recognizes that our religious culture and civilization, as clearly depicted by anthropology and history, are the product of a gradual development due to human interaction with the natural environment and with our social heritage. The individual born into a particular culture is largely molded by that culture. Number 5, humanism asserts that the nature of the universe depicted by modern science makes unacceptable the supernatural or cosmic guarantee of human values. Obviously, humanism does not deny the possibility of realities as yet undiscovered, but it does insist that the way to determine the existence and value of any and all realities is by means of intelligent inquiry and by the assessment of their relations to human needs. Religion must formulate its hopes and plans in the light of the scientific spirit and method. Now, Rees would offend many people with his new philosophy of humanism, especially as humanism leans strongly towards atheism, and many people find that pretty offensive. We know that Rees would have many interactions with people that were uncomfortable because of his humanism. We can be confident that he may have lost some friends. He certainly got some professional pushback from other Unitarian ministers. And we additionally know that he certainly broke some of his family relationships. But the creation of humanism, which was where the truth led Rees, it didn't cost him his life. The consequences to Rees were largely personal, social, survivable, but still daring.